Hello everyone, you're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. I'm Tyler, your host, and in today's video I want to talk about some items that I think will be great for barter if the dollar ever fails, like in the case of runaway inflation or a freeze or crash of the digital economy. So let's get into it. Barter goods are sort of like an impromptu currency, so let's look at some of the traits that are desirable in a currency. Divisibility is one important factor, because you want to be able to make exact change and prices without spending too much, like using a gold bar to buy apples. Durability of your goods is also very important, which means that they don't go bad or wear down with use. But one of the most important factors in a good or currency is its desirability, which means that the people that you want to trade with want the things that you have to trade with them. In an evolving situation, desirability of different goods will change the most, and that's why I suggest a wide variety of trade goods to be able to provide desirability to a wide range of potential bartering partners. Two of the most important factors in the early stages of most situations will likely be food and water for most of the people that you want to trade with. For this, I think that water bottles and things like tuna packets are a great suggestion because while you may have larger stores of bulk foods, other people may not, and so they will likely trade at a very high value for items like this. Items like coffee will also trade at a very high value because they are both somewhat of a necessity and a vice trade item. Speaking of necessity, medications like ibuprofen and other painkillers, including the topical variety like oral painkillers, are a great option which will trade at a very high value after the stores have closed. This next item is great because it mixes both luxury and necessity. It fulfills a need that women regularly experience, but prepared individuals can provide alternatives for themselves, allowing them to use items like this as a great barter item with individuals who have food and other necessities but want some of the basic conveniences of life. Now, I mentioned vice trade goods a minute ago, and this refers to things that are not necessary but which people will trade for at a high value if they have other basic necessities, and this includes things like cigarettes and alcohol. While these are not necessary, if people have their basic necessities taken care of, they will likely trade at a high value for things that they haven't had in a while but which were part of their regular life. The same will likely be true of our current standards of personal hygiene, and so I like to store away small travel units of soap, shampoo, and other things to trade because I may have alternatives for most of these things, but a lot of people won't, making these valuable currency. The same will likely be true of personal grooming, like razor blades, and since these can be purchased in large quantities for rather cheap and will likely be quite desirable at some time, I like to keep a lot of these around. Items like candles could trade at a very high value if people have no source of light, but you may also want them in the future, so make sure that you get your value if you do trade something like this away. Sometimes I store some oddball items just on the off chance that they'll be very valuable in certain situations, like pencils, which I imagine will become very popular again in a post-digital society. Things which have no value to you are things which are great to trade, and so that's why I like to keep duplicates of tools that I already own around, because I can get them for very cheaply. This one I got for 25 cents. But to some people who don't have basic tools like screwdrivers and flashlights, which is a surprising percentage of the population, these items will be like gold, even though to you they're wasted space. I have plenty of ways to start a fire, but I like to buy these matchbooks because they're 50 for $2, and people will probably trade a good deal of food if they have it, but no way to start fires regularly. Barter goods like ammunition are great because they fulfill all three desired traits of a currency. You can purchase a lot of the ones that you use knowing that they'll be useful to you or that you'll be able to trade them. You can also purchase some that you don't regularly use but which are very common and will be tradable with others. Now, you can't really discuss barter without discussing precious metals. And while I love collecting copper and silver, and I think I've got some gold around here somewhere, it's important to remember that precious metals are a store of value, and they have no inherent value to the individual. So they will be used to trade larger values, probably when things are a bit more stable and people have the necessities like food and water. As always, your most important resource is yourself and your own abilities. Honing skills which could be useful as barter services after a collapse type situation is a very viable way to prepare for future situations. Remember that knowledge and information is a tradable good, and while copyright infringement is a real thing now, it is definitely a valuable resource to be able to teach things that will give them valuable skills in a situation where those skills could mean the difference between life and death. And while there is a thin line between holding knowledge over people, it's not unfair if you are drawing out diagrams and teaching valuable skills to people who need them to request a payment in return. It's important to remember that a barter economy is nothing like the consumer economy that we're used to now. It will likely be cripplingly difficult to find easy means of trade with others without a central currency that everybody desires. But one thought that I often have is that the prepared individual can spend a minimal amount of money right now and gain a fortune in situations like that through the means of goods that are extremely desirable in those situations. On that note, one of my favorite items to collect right now that I think will be extremely valuable in the future is condiments like ketchup and sauce packets and plastic forks and spoons. These are essentially worthless in today's consumer and waste economy, but in the future they will be seen as both very valuable and a great reminder of a time past. In a barter economy, innovation and entrepreneurship are basic ways of life in a world where you need to get the most value for the least expenditure to yourself. And this is a fun way to start thinking now in a world where you can make the most value out of the least. We live in a time where resources are basically just lying around, and so it's very fun and very rewarding to me to find ways to make these resources more valuable to me in the future. I hope that this look at some of my favorite barter items was thought-provoking for some of you, or at least got you thinking about it again. Thank you for tuning in with Let's Talk About Prepping, and I hope that you'll tune in with future videos. Stay safe out there, everyone.